Point of view, probably something that past the first chapter of a book or 10 minutes of a video game, you don't pay much attention to. At least not consciously and not for very long. You pick a certain genre, likely expecting a certain type of point of view. Let's stick with video games for an example. You want first person to be fully immersed in the action? There's plenty of those. We got puzzle games, we got first person shooters, we've got survival horror, the like. There's lots of options for first person. You want to actually be able to see your character from a longer distance, like in third person? Fantasy RPGs are great, action adventure titles, life simulators, shooters, survival horror. Yeah, there's a lot of overlap between genres and point of view. Sometimes a game will even switch point of views during gameplay, often during cutscenes. There are no strict guidelines of what to use where, much like in fiction. Right, fiction, writing, that is why I'm here today, and that's why you're here too. You, lovely viewer, want to start writing fiction, and you've heard of point of view, you know that it's important, but you don't really know why, or even what exactly it is. That's why I'm here. Hi, hello, welcome to the book lab. My name is Anna, and rather than coming to you as your book lab partner, like normal, today I'm coming before you as your writing lab partner, or teacher, I guess. I myself have been writing for like 11 years now or something, and point of view has become quite a subject of interest for me personally in terms of reading and writing. I wrote a whole 12-page essay about point of view in the spring, and I basically did it again for this video. So today I'm going to teach you the basics of point of view. So let's start with the obvious question. What is point of view? In essence, point of view is the eye through which you are telling a story. Who is telling the story? Someone directly involved in the action or someone outside of it? How is the story being told? How close do you want to be to the thoughts and minds of your characters? How limited do you want the reader's view of the world to be? Whichever point of view you choose is the one you'll filter the story through, often because you want a certain desired effect in your storytelling. There are 3 types of point of view, the names of which are likely familiar, and I technically already listed 2 of them earlier when talking about video games. The 3 are first person, second person, and third person, with there being 2 main subcategories of third, so technically we're going to be talking about 4/5 different points of view. Regardless, I'll explain the basics of each point of view individually and provide some popular book examples you can use for each one. Sounds good? Cool. But before we get there though, I do want to make a distinction. Maybe you've heard the terms point of view, perspective, and narrator all used interchangeably when talking about this topic. This is technical and more in the weeds than I want to get right off the bat, but there's a chance you're confused by the jargon of the writing world, which is totally okay. That's normal. It takes time to learn. I don't even know everything, but I want to clear this up because the 3 of these things are connected, but they are not the same. Point of view is the eye through which you're telling the story, like I already established. It's the technical part that you decide likely before you even start writing, because it will determine how you tell the story. Perspective, while often confused with point of view, is less about technical choices like pronouns and more about the opinion and experience of a character. Like how you and your friends could all experience the same thing, but each individual person will have their own personal perspective on what happened. Think of perspective as the subjective stuff. This will color how your character views the world and what they do or do not report to the reader. And the narrator, simply put, is the person telling the story, even if it isn't an active character in the story. Basically, the perspective belongs to the narrator, and those 2 both contribute to the point of view. It's hard to explain, but hopefully that helped clear it up a little bit. If the point of view and perspective thing is still a little fuzzy, there's a helpful resource linked down below. But with that out of the way, let's get into our first point of view, first person. Another day, another alarm blaring in my ear at 8 a.m. It's Monday morning again, and I need to get up and get to work in an hour. But God, what I wouldn't give to just sleep for 2 more hours. Not that I want to return to that dream, though. That was weird. Of course, I barely remember it, but I know it was weird. Guess I better get up and get going. In first person, the narrator is one of the characters actively involved in the story, relating their perspective using I pronouns. First person pronouns, would you believe it? First person often provides the reader the easiest access to the mind of the character, though this is not strictly a first person characteristic, it's just most common there. First person is also a great place to start experimenting with narrative and character voice, which is determined by the background of the character. Voice is basically how a character talks. Is the narrator funny, serious, hyper-analytical, something else? Again, voice definitely applies to the other types of point of view, but it most applies to first person. What the reader experiences of the story is limited to what the character themselves know and experience. So when writing first person, you need to be aware of what your character would know about the situation at hand. A regular person in a dystopian society would most likely not know the complex inner workings of the oppressive government. So you can't include that knowledge in their point of view, because why or how would they know that? If you do, gotta have a good reason for it. The first example I want to give for first person point of view is Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, since that's a hot topic with the recent Guillermo del Toro film adaptation. Technically, Frankenstein is all first person point of view with 3 different narrators with their own perspectives. There's a ship captain, Walton, whose point of view we get at the beginning. Then we follow Victor for a while. Then we get the creature's story, who has a different perspective on the parts that overlap with Victor. And then we get Victor again for a bit, and then we end with Walton again. Although, if you really want to be technical, the whole book is Walton because the entire book is just an insanely long letter he wrote to his poor sister. Walton recorded the accounts of both Victor and the creature filtered through Victor himself, and then what the creature tells him at the end. That's beside the point, okay? There's layers. It's called framing. Frankenstein is a good example of this distinction between perspective and narrator, I think. For more examples, a lot of modern romances are written in first person, like, say, Emily Henry. The Hunger Games is also an incredible example. The Great Gatsby is an interesting first person story because the most intriguing part about the plot, Gatsby, the guy, he's not the narrator. Nick, who comes to this situation as an outsider, he's the narrator, and we get to learn about Gatsby, Daisy, and everything else through Nick's perspective. Other examples include Fourth Wing, The Martian, Catcher in the Rye, so many others. There are so many examples out there, especially since first person has become more common and popular in the last century. This is you. You're here, in a sense, inside of this phone. You are likely watching this video on your phone or computer or your TV if you're so bold. This bit surprised you because you weren't expecting this meta attempt at visualizing second person, which is, quite frankly, impossible to do correctly. So let's get you out of here. Second person point of view is by far the least common point of view to write in, and it's also one of the most controversial. It's strange to read, and it's incredibly difficult to write and do well, at least in fiction. A lot of nonfiction, especially self-help books, are written in the second person, but that's because you, as the reader, are the one who stands to gain something from the text, so that's why it's directed at you. But that's not how it works here. In fiction, second person uses you pronouns to the effect that you want your reader to be as immersed in the story as possible because the narrator is speaking directly to them. You're basically forcing the reader to be a character. If you want to challenge yourself, by all means, go ahead and write second person. It's definitely a fun exercise. Your high school creative writing teacher who said that second person is bad and you should never do it is wrong. They're wrong and they're stupid. You just have to be brave and put in the work of nailing down who your audience is and how you want to speak to them to keep them engaged and pull them in. Now, full-length novels in second person are a little hard to come by. Like I said, they're a real test of the skill of the writer. There are a few popular books that are at least partially in second person. There's The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern, Bright Lights Big City by J. McInerney, If on a Winter's Night a Traveler by Italo Calvino, which I've heard is a tough read, but I haven't read it. Or the other two, to be honest. The only good example I have read is The Fifth Season by N.K. Jemisin, which is a high fantasy with 3 different points of view, one of which is second person, and it's done so incredibly well. It's a really dense world and story, so if you're new to fantasy, I would suggest you hold off until you get a little more experience in the genre, but I definitely recommend this series if you want a good example of second person, or honestly just point of view in general, because that's like one of my favorite parts of the series, is that the point of view is so interesting. It's so fascinating. It's so cool. You should check it out. Frantic to film this video before she loses all semblance of natural light, Anna leans toward her mirror to apply her makeup. After wiping away her eye crust, she takes the eyeliner pencil that's so flat it's barely usable and applies it to her waterline. I should switch to the new one soon, she thinks. Next is the liquid eyeliner for the wing, trying to keep it small and simple and symmetrical. Then she finishes off with mascara, making sure it's not too smudged, and decides that's it. Third person, I'd say, is the point of view that's traditionally been used for the longest. For a long time, it was held in higher regard than first person, though that is definitely changing in the 21st century and also in the 20th century, but especially now. Third person point of view means that the narrator, remember that's whoever's telling the story, is outside of the plot, and every character is referred to with she, he, they, etc. There are 2 main types of third person point of view, those being third person limited and third person omniscient. I'm gonna start with omniscient because it's slightly simpler. An omniscient narrator knows everything about the story and the characters, even things that the characters themselves don't know. And the narrator can access the thoughts of these characters whenever they want. This gives the widest lens of the story since the narrator is completely removed from the action, although you, as the writer, can still control what the reader does and does not know. Omniscient narrators can have personalities of their own sometimes, which can make for a fun reading experience. Examples of books with omniscient narrators include Pride and Prejudice, The Book Thief, Beartown, Lord of the Rings, and The Hobbit. Fairy tales in general, or stories that are told like that, are good examples of omniscience. Like Once Upon a Time in a Faraway Land, like that's a very omniscient type of narrator. You get it? Now, third person limited, or close third, as it's sometimes called, still has a narrator that isn't an actual character, but the narrator sticks a lot closer to one character in particular than omniscient, which narrows the reader's view of the world. You often have more access to the character's thoughts and feelings in close third, but not quite the same in first. You can push it, but it's not quite the same as in first person. Close third is quite common these days, especially in genres like fantasy with large casts of characters. Many such books will have multiple POV chapters, or like multiple different narrators, I guess. This often means staying within the same mode, so staying within third person, but switching to focus on different characters. So like one chapter could be about this character, the other one, this character. When you do this switching focalization thing, you have to be aware of which character you're following in a given scene and make sure you stay with them and you don't head hop to other characters. So like you can't be telling a scene from the third person point of view of one character and somehow include the thought of another character in the scene. You can't do that. Then there's an aspect of close third that's more closely involved with voice than it is like point of view exactly. That I won't fully dive into, but if you've ever heard of free and direct discourse or free and direct style, I call it style, but a lot of people call it discourse. That's what I'm talking about. In short, free and direct style is when the voice of the character blends with the third-person narrator and the character's thoughts are directly on the page without signifiers like she thought. That's a grand oversimplification, but that's basically what it is. I'll link the essay Narrating by James Wood in the description if you want to look more into this, since this is the essay that helped me understand it. Note that you don't need to agree with everything he says about point of view, because he starts out being like, this point of view is more reliable than the other, but then he's like, well, but actually it's the other way around. You don't have to agree with everything that he says. People love to be opinionated about the hyperspecificities of point of view, but regardless, I think his essay is a good introduction point to free and direct style. Everything else, don't worry about for right now. You can save that for later, or you don't have to know it at all. For an example of a multi-POV fantasy, I recommend Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. General close third includes The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes from the Hunger Games series, which is the only book in the franchise written in third person instead of first, Game of Thrones, Fahrenheit 451, The Poppy War, and The Adventures of Amina al-Sarafi. And if you want a crazy example of free and direct style, the short story Victory Lap by George Saunders is a good pick. Fair warning, one of the narrators is a guy who tries to kidnap a girl for nefarious reasons, and you have to read his monologue while he does it, but it's such a fascinating work of third person that just feels like first person. So, that's it. That's the basics of the 3 types of point of view. There are far more technical aspects that I could get into, but I will not because, I'll be honest, I don't even fully understand them. Sometimes knowing which point of view and how to use it is just intuitive. Sometimes I'll have an idea for something and part of that idea includes what kind of point of view it is. Other times I'll start writing something in third person, realize that something about that perspective is just not it, and then I'll start over with first person. And then I didn't like that very much either, so I kind of let that project go. But that's beside the point. Maybe one day I'll go back to that, but you know, it happens to the best of us. What I mean by all this is, you don't need to be tied to writing one point of view. If you don't like one, try another. If you want to branch out, go for it. Every risk is an opportunity for learning, even if that results in just learning that you don't like the thing. There's so much room for experimentation when it comes to writing point of view, so truly have fun with it. That's kind of what writing is all about, I think. Thank you so much for stopping by the book lab for this lesson. I hope it was helpful with at least increasing your base knowledge understanding of point of view. I've been your book lab partner, Anna, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye!